A year and a half after the brutal killing of 4 college students, Xana Kernodle, her boyfriend Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Gonzalez. Families and friends still awaiting justice as a trial has yet to be set for Bryan Kohberger.
I hope people understand how all these kids that were a part of this were doing everything right. And they were going to be the type of people that you wanted to be your neighbor.
On November 13th of 2022, a quadruple homicide rocked the quiet college town of Moscow, Idaho, and the nation. It made headlines everywhere.
Now to the investigation into the deaths of 4 college students from the University of Idaho. There is news tonight, chilling new images.
It also took over social media with theories.
All right, this is what I think happened in the Idaho murders.
Unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure you've heard of the University of Idaho murders.
As the victims' families and friends waited nearly 7 weeks for a suspect to be arrested.
The arrest of a 28-year-old man in Pennsylvania in connection with the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students.
Now, new reporting about the murders detailed in a new book by award-winning author Howard Bloom.
You come to the conclusion that based on your research, your interviews, you believe that Bryan Kohberger did it.
I believe that Bryan Kohberger did it, but there are 2 parts to that question. The first part is, can he be convicted in a court of law? And I think that's a much higher mountain to climb.
When the Night Comes Falling, based in part on Bloom's early conversations with the Moscow Police Department before the judge issued a gag order shrouding the investigation in secrecy.
I was able to reconstruct this night when everything seems to fall apart.
It all began November 12th, 2022, a Saturday night in college. Friends headed to local bars and parties. Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Mogen, newly 21, went to the popular campus bar, the Corner Club, around 10 p.m.
These 2 girls were just there for each other.
Steve Gonzalez is Kaylee's heartbroken father.
They went to dances together.
Yeah, just a good, wholesome friendship that you hope every child has. And you're grateful that they have that.
Investigators say the 2 young women left the Corner Club around 1:30 a.m. And by 1:40, Kaylee and Maddie were seen laughing and taking pictures as they ordered from a food truck in downtown Moscow.
I could just tell just by her body language that she was definitely feeling pretty good. And I wish I could have been there and given them a hug.
At 1:56 a.m., the pair arrived home. According to authorities, their roommate, Xana Kernodle, and her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, both 20 years old, were at a fraternity party earlier that same night, but also returned to that off-campus home by about 1:45 a.m. Hours later, all 4 were dead. The other 2 roommates were already home and allegedly sleeping. They were unharmed. Little information has been released to the public, but Bloom's book now claiming to fill in some of the gaps that night.
In your reporting, you come to the conclusion that Maddie was the target in this.
The authorities, in their mind, are convinced that the suspect came in through the sliding door on the 2nd floor of the house. Right once you enter the kitchen area, there's a bedroom that Dylan Mortensen was in. On the left-hand side, the right-hand side was Xana's bedroom. If he was just on a killing spree, it would have been natural, instinctive, to go to one of those doors. Instead, he goes up this narrow staircase and he turns directly into Maddie's room. And I think Maddie was his target.
Sources tell both Bloom and ABC News that the 2 surviving roommates were using their phones to communicate during and after the murders.
According to testimony that was made to the grand jury, the 2 girls were communicating. They were texting one another, not just after, but at one point during the killings.
Sources close to Kohberger's family telling Bloom his father Michael was on edge as he picked up Bryan from school that winter.
He's been reading the headlines. He knows that 4 students were killed just 12 miles from his son's house. He knows what a troubled son he has. The Moscow police issue a BOLO, a stop order on a car that is a white Hyundai Elantra. He realizes my son drives a 2015 Hyundai Elantra.
And according to Bloom sources, Bryan's own sister approached their dad, voicing her suspicions about Bryan.
What was that conversation like?
She's a family psychologist, and she knows her brother has had problems. She goes to Michael, and she says, Dad, in effect, we have a real problem. I'm starting to believe that Bryan could be involved in these killings. And what does Michael do? He can't confront it. He just turns around and walks away.
Shortly after, police arrested Bryan Kohberger on December 30th, 2022. The Kohberger family not commenting on the claims in Bloom's book. His former public defender in Pennsylvania, Jason LaBar, saying, "I find it brazen that such an esteemed author would publish a book based on multiple layers of speculation, assumptions, and presumptions, while Bryan Kohberger, veiled in innocence, has yet to have his trial." While Bloom details Kaylee's father's tireless pursuit of answers, the Gonzalez family telling ABC News they have never spoken with Mr. Bloom about the contents of his book, and they call it fiction, a version made up by him relying on sources that have no responsibility or duty to speak the truth.
In May of last year, at his arraignment, Kohberger stood silent.
Your Honor, we will be standing silent.
Because Mr. Kohberger is standing silent, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each charge.
There's no real rhyme or reason for you to stand silent. If you truly believe yourself to be not guilty, then say it. If you want to take a plea, then say it. But standing silent doesn't stop the proceedings. It doesn't move it forward.
Investigators claim DNA evidence and surveillance footage, plus cell phone records, all link Kohberger to the murders. But his attorney maintains that he had no connection to the victims.
Kohberger has been held at the Latah County Jail in Moscow, Idaho since early 2023, while his team builds their case, claiming he's innocent.
When will the trial take place? You know, that's the question that the defense does not want to be answered. Their strategy seems to be delay, delay, delay. There's a wisdom that lawyers often say, if you have the facts, go into the courtroom and pound them. If you don't have the facts, pound the table. Well, Bryan Kohberger's defense is doing a lot of table pounding.
A hearing next week could finally set a date for Bryan Kohberger's trial to begin.
Our thanks to Kana. When the Night Comes Falling is out Tuesday.